So the England players, are wearing black armbands today in memory of England and Yorkshire captain Ray Illingworth, who's died at the age of 89, the all-rounder who led England to an away Test series victory over Australia in 1970-71, had been undergoing radiotherapy for cancer. It's worth Andy Zaltzman just putting his career into context and telling us, reminding younger listeners about Ray Illingworth, because there are not many captains who've come to Australia and regained the Ashes. In fact, Ray Illingworth's the only England captain who's done it since Bodyline.
Yes, played 61 tests for England between 1958 and 1973, scored over 1,800 test runs at an average of 23 and 122 wickets with his off-spin at 31. He captained in just over half of his test match, 31 times as England captain in tests. He won 12 and lost 5, one of the best win-loss ratios of any England captain.
He helped Yorkshire win 7 domestic titles in 9 years, from 1959 to 68, and Yorkshire wrote on their social media output today, "We're deeply saddened to learn that Ray Illingworth has passed away." They paid tribute to, quote, "the club's most successful modern-day captain. Our thoughts are with Ray's family and the wider Yorkshire family who held Ray so dear to their hearts." The England and Wales Cricket Board Chief Executive Tom Harrison said in a statement, "It's always incredibly sad to lose a person who's given so much to the English game and to the sport of cricket in general. Ray was a superb cricketer, and his deep love, passion and knowledge for the game meant he continued to contribute long after his playing days had finished. We send our sympathy and warmest wishes to Ray's family and friends at this difficult time." Of course, Ray Illingworth played for Leicestershire as well, where he captained Aggers, and we'll hear from Jonathan in a moment, and from Ian Chappell, who captained against him. Leicestershire said on their Twitter feed, "Everybody at Leicestershire County Cricket Club is deeply, deeply saddened to hear of the passing of their former captain. Our thoughts are with Illy's family and friends at this difficult time." He was born in Pudsey, between Leeds and Bradford in Yorkshire, on the 8th of June 1932, and began playing at his local club in Farsley, where he would reside for nearly all of his life. Yes, he continued to prepare the wickets for Farsley well into his 70s, and the club tweeted that cricket had, quote, "lost a great." They added, "absolute legend," in capital letters, "of a man you'll be sorely missed by many." His first-class career spanned over 30 years. He made his debut in 1951, just after his 19th birthday, and it continued for a decade after he last played for England. The last of his 61 tests, finally retired from first-class cricket in 1983, aged 51. He played for Yorkshire during one of their most successful periods. He was a hugely influential player in their run of 7 county championship titles in 9 years, including 3 in a row from 1966. Also helped Leicestershire win their first ever county championship title in 1975. In all, in almost 800 first-class games, he scored over 24,000 first-class runs, averaged 28, and took over 2,000 wickets with an impressive average of 20.2. Yeah, 2,000 wickets at 20.27. He moved into television commentary before taking over as England chairman of selectors. We've heard there that he had a long career after playing. He certainly did as well. TV commentary, England chairman of selectors in 1994, and he combined that with the job of national team coach for what's actually quite a controversial spell from 1995 to 96. He had a heart attack in 2011 during his second year as Yorkshire president, and revealed in November he was receiving treatment for cancer. Ray Illingworth's finest hour on the field came here, as I mentioned, in the Ashes series of 1970-71, when he captained England to a 2-0 series win. He was without John Snow for the latter stages of the final match at Sydney after the star bowler injured his hand on the boundary fence. So it fell to Illingworth, Basil D'Oliveira, Derek Underwood and others to seal a famous victory.
Now Illingworth to Greg Chappell. Stumped, he's out, yes. Well bowled Illingworth. Chappell, stumped, not. Bowled Illingworth 30. O'Keefe not out one. Australia 7 for 142. And Illingworth has 3 for 28. And well bowled, he picked Chappell's desire to come forward, the end of Greg Chappell, and probably the end of Australia's hopes.
12 long years from the day Peter May's team lost on the Adelaide Oval, Ray Illingworth's side has triumphed in this magnificent Sydney Test. Illingworth, leading his men in splendid fashion, won the series 2-0, and he has a royal farewell from this great ground with his players cheering him off. For this tour, the England selectors, led by Alec Bedser, chose Illingworth as captain, and now for only the third time in 50 years, England have regained the Ashes in Australia. This must surely be the greatest moment of Ray Illingworth's cricketing life.
Yes, actually, I've had many happy moments in 20 years of cricket, but none more so than today. Great moments for the boys.
I can't remember a captain in my time who's had more people on his back than you've had on this tour, even in the last few days when you were poised to win the Ashes. And in some way, I think you've answered them out there today, first of all by bowling superbly and by handling that side as well as I've seen the cricket team handled in 10 years.
Yeah. I think this is perfectly true. I've always felt that my only way back at these people was on the cricket field, and I hope that it's proved the point today.
How did you feel when you were cheered off the field in the Sydney Cricket Ground, where I think the last time you played here at the end of a series was in 1962-3, and you had one or two problems after that tour as well?
Yes, I seem to have my problems on tour, but it was a great moment, very near to tears, and I really enjoyed it, yes.
Well, that was Ray Illingworth talking to Richie Benaud at the end of that series back in 71. Ian Chappell, you were the captain in that Test match. What was it, the 7th of the series, was it?
Yes, it was. We were washed out in Melbourne, and they had the one-day game there because of the washout. So that meant that we played 7 tests. That was my first test as captain. Yeah.
What was he like to captain against, and what were your memories of him?
I've got very fond memories of playing against Illy, both as a captain and as a player. He always wanted a game of cricket. That was the first thing that struck you, that you could have a battle with Illy, and he was looking for a result. And so that made the cricket interesting. And, you know, I talked about that 72 series. We had a great series there. It was 2-2. We had the draw in Nottingham at Trent Bridge. We had the better of the draw, but it was just good cricket. And one of the reasons why it was good cricket was because the first innings scores, if you look them up, they were pretty well all between about 275 and 315. So it meant that if you were bowling second, you had to get on your horse and do something, and you had to field well. And so that brought about some really good cricket matches. As I say, I learned a lot about captaincy from Illy, captaining against him in those test matches. I learned how to... Illy always let you know that he was trying to get you out. Even if you were on top and you were scoring some runs, he would still have fieldsmen, and you'd be looking at him thinking, what the hell are they doing there? But you knew that Illy was still trying to get you out. And that's what I learned. That was the hardest thing as a captain, was to let the opposition know that you were still trying to get them out, even when you were pulling back a bit and trying to save runs. That was the hardest thing, and Illy did it very well.
Yeah. And tactically, I mean, how good was he tactically?
He was good. He kept the pressure on you. As I say, as a batsman, if you know that the opposing captain's always trying to get you out, even if you're 100 and you're looking around thinking, they should be back somewhere, but they're not. So tactically, Illy was good, and he understood that if you got a wicket, that put you back, if not on top, at least even, and he would come back and start attacking you again. And that's what you learnt from Illy, was you never go totally on the defensive. And there's always a point in the game where, boom, you're suddenly back in the game, and that's the time to attack. I've said it a million times on commentary. If you don't attack at the start of a player's innings, when the hell are you going to attack? That's the time to get at him. Illy understood that, but he also understood that even if you got to 60, 70, don't totally pull back. Still let the guy know, I'm trying to get you out, mate.
And we heard him talking to Richie Benaud there about his sort of difficulties. He always saying everything was against me. Obviously you were against it. That was one of the things. But there was the incident, the John Snow incident in that Sydney Test match where he took the players off the field. What did you think of that as an opposition captain?
Well, I remember Lou Rowan was one of the umpires, and he came down into our dressing room and he said, I'm just letting you know that I'm going down to the England dressing room, and I'm going to tell them if they don't take their players back on the field, they'll forfeit the game. And because it was my first test, I thought, I hope Illy doesn't take them back, because I'll take a win any way that I can get it. But you knew that Illy was a cricketer and he didn't want to just hand the test match over. And I pretty well knew that Illy was going back out there. And I was probably saying, bugger him, I wish he wouldn't. But that was the thing about Ray, and that's why I have a very good feeling about Ray. You knew that you could have a good game of cricket, but you knew it would be a tough game of cricket. But what you knew from that was, if you happened to beat him at the end of the game, you knew that you'd earned that victory. And that was the thing about Illy. He didn't just disappear if you beat them. Like at Lord's, for instance, where we came back to 1-1, where Bob Massey got the 16 wickets, Greg got 100, and we won the test. Illy came down into our dressing room and he shook me by the hand. Well played. We had a beer. We talked about it. And that was the thing you knew about the opposition. If you beat the opposition and you didn't see him, you thought to yourself, we've got this lot. But with Illy, you might beat him, but he would come down and well played and so on. And you're thinking, well, we've beaten him, but he hadn't gone away yet. And you just knew in the back of your mind, Illy wasn't going away. He was going to be there.
Do you just talk cricket, or do you talk other things as well?
We mainly talk cricket, but this will give you an indication of how much admiration I had for Ray. I did a program for the BBC while I was there as a commentator, and we did the radio program where the guests picked their discs. And I had Gary Sobers on, I had David Lloyd on, but I also had Illy on as a guest. And Illy picked his, I forget now whether it was 5 or 6 favourite discs. So, we talked a bit of music as well, and I understood that Illy liked music and I liked music. We talked mainly cricket, but we had other things as well.
Yeah. You were up against him in an Ashes series. So 5 tests in 72.
Yep.
The one in 71. He wasn't there in 74-5. It was Mike Denness by then.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any sort of fallings out with him, or was it always that mutual respect there?
I think there was a mutual respect there, and I was delighted with the fact that now what series would Mike Atherton have captained here?
94-5?
Yeah, right. Well, I was a commentator for Channel 9 on that series, and Ray never told me, but I had dinner with Mike Atherton during that series. And while we were having dinner, Mike said to me, Ray Illingworth told me to come and see you and talk a bit of captaincy. He said, I think that would be a good idea. And that just told me that there was a respect there. And I, that meant a lot to me, because I knew Illy was a good captain. And if he'd taken the trouble to send Atherton along, it sort of suggested to me that he must have thought that I was a reasonable captain.
Was there anything else that you took? You said you were up against him in your first test as captain. Was there anything else you took into your captaincy? You talked about this idea of trying to get a batter out, which actually sounds really sort of common sense, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you try and get a batter out? But anything about the way he led his team or moved his field or whatever it might be?
Well, Illy was a strong guy, and I looked at the way that he handled John Snow. Now, Snowy wasn't the easiest guy in the world. Snowy wanted to do what Snowy wanted to do. But Ray worked that out, and he knew how to get the best out of John Snow. And that meant a lot to me as a captain, because, Dennis Lilly was not the John Snow of Australia, but Dennis, early days you could take the mickey out of Dennis, but he learned very quickly. And Dennis became very much a player who had a mind of his own. And, I was aware of, let's make sure that Dennis is happy doing this. I remember one incident in particular. It was in 72 in England. And I said at the start of the tour to Dennis Lilly, mate, you'll bowl a little bit in the county games, but I'll put you in cotton wool, really. He said, you'll put me in cotton wool after I get a 5-wicket haul. He said, I'm not going in cotton wool till after I get 5 wickets. He said, you're a batsman. You like to get 100 to feel that you're in form. I like to get 5 wickets to feel that I'm in form. And that was a very good lesson to me, because I hadn't thought of it from the bowler's point of view. And immediately I'm thinking, that's the way that Ray Illingworth would have handled players. So I learned about captaincy mainly from observation, and I learned that point from Raymond Illingworth about observation. But, you could learn a lot from Illy by just seeing what he did.
Ian, thanks very much.
Pleasure,
thanks
mate.
very much for your time.
Nice to talk about Illy. I liked him.
Yeah. He was the first captain I remember when I started following cricket in the early 70s. Ray Illingworth, I remember that 72 series that Ian played in. Finished 2-2. And there was Fusarium, that Headingley, Bob Massey's match as well at Lord's. Look it up if you don't know too much about it. And then, of course, throughout his career, I remember him then losing the England captaincy in 1973 after a defeat against the West Indies at the Oval. But latterly, you remember him as a TV commentator, and you also remember him as his involvement in the England management as well, going on tours overseas in the mid-90s. If you have just switched on, we'll talk a bit more about Ray Illingworth in just a moment with Jonathan Agnew, who played under him at Leicestershire. Let me bring you up to date with the score at lunch on the first day of the third test between Australia and England at the MCG. On Boxing Day, England are 61 for 3 put into bat. They lost the wicket of Milan just before lunch, edging to Warner at first slip off Cummins for 14. Hamid out for 0, caught by Carey off Cummins, a little feather edge, and Zach Crawley a thick edge to Green in the gully off Cummins for 12. So 4 for 1, 13 for 2, 61 for 3. Root is 33 not out. Ben Stokes is having 40 minutes to think about his latest innings in the series. It'll be fascinating to see what he comes up with this afternoon, because he was in defensive mode in Adelaide, giving himself time to sort of get back in really, and then of course trying to grind out for a draw on that final day of the test match at the Adelaide Oval. So he hasn't really produced the score so far that one would expect him, but he's just feeling his way back into test cricket. Anyway, he'll be out there presumably straight after lunch, unless England have shuffled the batting order. Bairstow's in the lineup, and Butler to come as well, and then it's the bowlers. Wood in at number 8 for England. So let's continue our tribute to Raymond Illingworth, who's died at the age of 89. A player, captain, TV commentator, and also administrator as well, involved in England management. How do you remember him, Jonathan? Your first captain at Leicestershire?
He certainly was. Well, I mean, he was my hero really, because he was the man who watched on the telly the test matches. He was England captain, and he was just such a sort of inspirational figure from that as a 12, 13-year-old, England captain and so on. But then to turn up at Leicestershire, and within just a few weeks to end up playing, because there was a sort of injury crisis, and I ended up walking in, and there he is as captain. The first time I'd met him. And
was he quite an intimidating figure at that stage?
Massively intimidating. He spent much of his years at Leicestershire, the later years, trying to control a young David Gower, which wasn't easy. And I think David would certainly say that he owes Raymond a huge amount.
When you say trying to control him, on the field or off the field?
Oh, both. He frustrated him. He drove him mad. He would turn up in a sort of DJ and dinner suit and stuff. I mean, he just David loved winding Illy up, and Illy would chunter away as he would, but he also had a lovely sense of humour, Ray. But he never understood the youngsters, he never really got into that. But I remember my first match, so we were playing Lancashire, and as he often did, quite craftily, Illy, he would bring Jack Birkinshaw on first, and then, because he was an off spinner, if the ball turned, he'd whip him off and bring himself on. So I remember him, and I'm 18, I'm out of school, and I'm suddenly playing with these people, and I'm standing at mid-off, and Clive Lloyd is batting. I mean, you're still pinching yourself. And I remember before Jack bowled his first ball, Illy was in the gully, he always fielded in the gully, whoever was bowling is fielding in the gully. And he said, hang on, Jack, lad. He said, look at your field. And Jack's saying, what's wrong with it? And I'm listening to this. He said, come on, he said, you're bowling uphill, slow pitch, and you're bowling into the breeze. And Jack said, yeah. Well, he said, well, then deep square leg needs to be 5 yards squarer. Come on. So I think it was Chris Bolston out there, another Yorkshireman. And so Jack, in a sort of resigned sort of way, said, come on, Chris, 5 yards round, keep the captain happy. Well, it was, memories will be vague, but within a few balls, anyway, Clive Lloyd just swept it straight to Chris Balderson. Absolutely didn't move an inch. And I remember thinking, it's a bit different to school, because that was Illy. Illy had, very few people have it, just these hunches about the game. Things that he would work, bowling changes, bringing on Basil D'Oliveira and things to break partnerships. He was a brilliant captain when you had to manipulate a championship game in those days a bit. What Illy was brilliant at was keeping the side that was chasing the target on the last day, keeping him in the game. So he might, I mentioned Chris Balderson, he might bring Chris Balderson on for a couple of overs.
Well, he might bring you on for a couple of overs.
Well, he would bring Bowley on thinking this will get them thinking about winning again. And of course it freed them up, and so Chris might get a wicket, and then bang, he's off, and none comes in. That was the way that he captained, the way he captained England. One of the most successful captains there's been. You look back at the 70-71 tour here, to come and actually regain the Ashes here and not to lose a single game. There's lots of incident in it, and what I will definitely say about Ray, and I did get that when I was at Leicestershire, was how he was a real supporter of the players. He stood up for the players, and because he was so respected by the administrators, although some administrators thought he was difficult and hard to deal with, but actually he was a bit of quite a trade union type, but he would demand rights for the players. And from that perspective, he was before his time, because that really didn't happen until Packer. So you're talking nearly 10 years later. But Illy, when they played the 7th Test match here, a rearranged one, it was washed out. It seems extraordinary now, but the players weren't paid for it. They played this extra game, and Illy was furious. He had a row with the manager anyway, David Clark, who's from Kent, so there was a bit of a north-south, and Colin Cowdery and Illingworth always kind of seemed to be adversarial. But they weren't paid for it, and Illy went ballistic. As I heard Ian talking about, when he led the players off at Sydney, David Clark, manager, was trying to get them back out there. There were beer cans all over the field and crowds rioting, and Illy said, no, not going to do it. And in return, the players had run through a brick wall for him. So he was just, I think, the most natural cricket brain I've come across in the game. Boycott has his moments, obviously, as well, but Illy, an all-round game, he could just put his finger on it, pitches and stuff. He just knew. It's like an instinct. Yeah.
How long before it took you to get away from being intimidated by him, to sort of feel that fellow feeling that you obviously have for him?
He warmed me quite quickly, because I got a wicket. I got Gerald Bumble in my first over in first-class cricket, and so Illy again walked up from gully, wobble lad, and he said some very flattering things about me at the time. So I think he rated me, and so he always looked after me. Again, a bit frustrated. I had these sort of plastic boots from school, and that first game actually was an uncovered pitch, and it rained at the appropriate time. It's actually my first championship match. I spent 2 days in the field with these plastic boots on, and again,
when you say plastic boots, without any proper studding?
They had spikes, but they just had plastic soles. God, they're uncomfortable. We used to bowl 15 overs at school or something, but they had 2 days in the field. The thought that he went back, that was great thing about Illy. So he finished with us, and they went back to Yorkshire and ended up playing again. In his early 50s in the Sunday League.
He played at 51, didn't he?
I think maybe in 53. I might be right. But he certainly played, and he led. Maybe it was 1983. Anyway, he certainly led Yorkshire to the Sunday League when he was in his 50s, which is incredible. And Leicestershire, he put Leicester on the map. He had given up. The first thing he did was to get Ken Higgs, who had also retired. So he had one of the finest fast bowlers he had. He coaxed him back to Leicestershire. They won championship. They won one-day tournaments with Illy in charge. And I think the sad thing about Illy, and he knew it was going to happen, But the sad thing was that he got the England job far too late, because, let's say, he didn't really understand the youngsters anyway, and that was even more the case, of course, when he became the supremo in the 90s.
Yeah, it's just worth just reminding our listeners what he did become in the mid-90s.
Well, yeah. So after he finished playing, he then went into commentary and spent a lot of time doing TV, a bit of radio, I think, as well, pundit. But then, yes, he replaced Keith Fletcher as this supremo character, and he demanded that if he was going to do that job, he had to do everything.
Chris Silverwood, Silverwood.
Exactly it. He was Silverwood's predecessor, really, in that regard. No one else has done it since, and Illy insisted that was going to be the way. And so I remember him. I mean, he didn't. There were a few things he got wrong, I thought, but essentially he was too old for that job, because the gap between him and the players was too much. But he took, I think his first tour was South Africa, and he took as batting and bowling coach not a couple who would be able to relate to the players, but he took Peter Lever, my hero, who helped him win the Ashes and was about the same age as Illy, and John Edrich.
So two people he could relate to.
Absolutely,
rather than the players.
Yeah. And there was a sort of an incident with Devon Malcolm fairly early on, and his relations with the players were not good. And he and Atherton clearly didn't rub along very well. As you know, Atherton wanted a bit of a say as captain, I think, and clearly didn't get it. So I think that frustrated Michael quite a lot. And so it was, it was short-lived, really. It didn't work. But I think
he should have got that job.
He should have got the job in the 80s.
10 years before.
If he'd got the job then I think he would have been very successful at it, because he'd have had players who might have played against him even, but who respected him, and he would have understood them a bit more. So even though dear old David drove him mad in those early days, it was that I think was a mistake by England. But then there were others. Mickey Stewart did a pretty decent job, and Keith Fletcher was around. So he was the right person, just the wrong time.
Obviously, you were a journalist by then. You used to play under him as a junior bowler and then a more senior bowler. What was your relationship like?
Always good. Yeah. Do you know, the really sad thing is, I had dinner with David 2 nights ago.
David Gower.
David, on Christmas Eve. And he said, "Come on, we've got to get a quick video up for Illy. Just knock it off on the phones and send it to Ashley Metcalf, who's his son-in-law, and didn't do it." It's too late now. It's sad, because he'd have loved that. I used to bring him up every time I went to Headingley. He'd be there, go and sit and talk cricket with him. These are special people, and he was, Ray's knowledge, I don't think was used to its best effect when it could have been. It benefited TV viewers, and they'll have heard his no-nonsense remarks and observations about people. Never unkind. Never. It was not in that mould. He was always very balanced in his thoughts and his criticisms and so on. But because he was someone who did come up from the old school, for whom cricket was hard work. He was obviously a good spinner and probably a very good spinner and a decent lower order batsman, but gutsy. So therefore, he expected everyone else to put the same sort of work in. That's how he expected people to be.
Might get into this England team.
I think he would get into this England team very easily. Yeah. Very easily indeed. But it's nice, when you hear people like Ian Chappell and his brother Greg Chappell really talking in such respectful terms about someone, then you know they're pretty good. And Illy really was.
How would you rank him? It's 61 for 3 at lunch. I can see Ben Stokes, who's about to enter the fray. He's just down there. He's proud. He's on the prowl at the moment. Stokes, he's waiting for Root. There's Root, just appeared. The umpires will be with us shortly for this post-lunch session. Root 33, 61 for 3, all 3 wickets to Pat Cummins so far. How would you rank Ray Illingworth, who's died at the age of 89? How would you rank him against England captains you've come across in the...
Well, he has to be right up there, doesn't he? I mean, Mike Brearley, Ray Illingworth. They were just, 2 very special captains. And Ray led by example. I mean, for Mike Brearley, his place was often talked about in sort of under threat, wasn't it? I mean, Illy was never out. And so this is the humour of the man. A.A. Jones, who played for about 4 or 5 different counties, a fast bowler, and he was quite brisk actually, but he always had a massive grunt. Every ball he bowled was a huge grunt, and he completely cleaned up Ray Illingworth at Grace Road one time, and he played a horrific shot, an absolute shocking shot, got clean bowled. He came back in the dressing room. I thought bloody umpire called no ball. You know, grunt. He was never out. There was a sparrow sitting inoffensively on top of the Sykes green once. That was responsible for him getting out. I mean, he was never.
Umpire gave me the wrong guard.
Yeah, all the old classics. You know, Ray would have gone through the card with them. But he was a lovely man. Loved cricket, and to see him, pictures of him still sitting on the roller at Farsley Cricket Club, which was his life really. You know, in his 70s, he was still preparing the pitches there. That was, you know, he loved cricket.